Introduction. When it comes to the island of Jamaica, every Jamaican and those familiar with its history should be aware that the island honors 7 individuals with the prestigious title of National Heroes, the most senior order that can be bestowed upon any Jamaican locally. According to the Constitution of Jamaica, the honor of the Order of National Hero, the highest of the 5 Jamaican orders of the Societies of Honor, may be conferred upon any person who was born in Jamaica or is or at the time of his or her death, a citizen of Jamaica, who have rendered to Jamaica service of a most distinguished nature and should be addressed thereafter as the Right Excellent. Created by the National Honors and Awards Act, the Order of National Hero was established in 1968 and passed by Parliament in 1969, which at the time also designated Paul Bogle, George William Gordon, and Marcus Mosiah Garvey as the first 3 recipients of the honor. This was followed by Norman Washington Manley and his then still-living cousin, Sir William Alexander Clark Bustamante, Jamaica's first Prime Minister, who were both proclaimed National Heroes of Jamaica on the 18th of October 1969. In 1975, the government of Jamaica declared Nanny of the Maroons the only female to hold such a title to date, a national hero alongside Samuel Sharp aka Sam Sharp, the leader of the widespread 1831-32 Baptist War, also known as the Christmas Rebellion, where over 200 slaves were killed by troops, and a total of 310 to 340, convicted and hanged through the judicial process, including Sharp, in 1832. Listing of members of the Order of National Hero, all deceased. Nanny, leader of the Windward Maroons at the beginning of the 18th century, circa 1680s, circa 1740s. Samuel Sharp, circa 1700s, May 23, 1832, leader of the Birchall Baptist Church, Montego Bay. George William Gordon, circa 1820s, October 23, 1865, member of the House of Assembly. Paul Bogle, deacon and leader of the Native Baptist Church, Stony Gut, St. Thomas, circa 1822, October 24, 1865. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, August 17, 1887 to June 10, 1940, founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association UNIA. Sir Alexander Bustamante, G.B., February 24, 1884 to August 6, 1977, Chief Minister of Jamaica, December 1944 to January 1955. Premier of Jamaica, April 1962 to August 1962, and Prime Minister of Jamaica, April 1962 to February 1967, also the founder and president of the Jamaica Labour Party, JLP. Norman Washington Manley, MM, QC, July 4, 1893 to September 2, 1969, Chief Minister, January 1955 to July 1959. Premier, July 1959 to April 1962, and also the founder and president of the People's National Party, PNP. A lot can be said and have been said about all these individuals, who should and who shouldn't have been bestowed with such an honor, who is there just because of political reasons, who shouldn't be there because their contributions to Jamaica are questionable at best, who shouldn't be there because their image is questionable, and on goes the arguments, and oh, let's not forget the never-ending argument as to who should now be added to the National Hero Club, because that within itself is a whole different argument, in need of its own volume. But all that aside, this volume isn't about all these individuals and their exploits or lack of exploits thereof. However, this is about the one female on the list, and please, this is not an attack on females or nothing of that nature. No, this is about asking the pertinent questions and analyzing the facts as we now know them to be, nothing more, nothing less. So why is Nanny a questionable character? Simply because unlike all her counterparts, her history is unclear, and documentation of her exploits and contributions are dubious to say the least, so the facts or presumed facts need to be analyzed or reanalyzed, because most of what we know about her is according to Maroon oral history, passed down from generation to generation, with seemingly more sensation added throughout the years. According to Maroon oral history, Nanny's success in defending her people against the colonial forces was often attributed to her mysterious supernatural powers. Many in her community attributed Nanny's leadership skills to her Obia powers. Obia is an ancestrally inherited tradition of Akan witches of Ghana's Ivory Coast and Togo and their descendants in the African diaspora of the Caribbean. According to legend, Nanny had magical powers and could catch bullets and then redirect them back at the people who shot at her. Sensational? Indeed, to the point that some have even started questioning the very existence of Nanny to begin with, even though there is actual evidence to confirm that a Nanny did exist, confirmed by the Journal of the Assembly of Jamaica, 29–30 March 1733, where a citation for resolution, bravery and fidelity was awarded to loyal slaves, under the command of Captain Sambo. Namely William Cuffy, a Traitor, leader of the Black Shots and an arch-enemy of the Maroons, who is believed to have been a Maroon at one point before switching his allegiance and sided with the British, who was rewarded for having fought the Maroons in the First Maroon War and who is called a very good party Negro, having killed Nanny, the rebels' old Obia woman. Some accounts claim that Cuffy was rewarded the £500 which was offered for the head of the Negro's old witch in 1733/4. However, this narrative is disputed by the Maroons, who instead insist that Queen Nanny lived to be an old woman, dying of natural causes in the 1760s. The exact date of her death, however, remains a mystery. Another layer to the confusion is that Nanny in Maroon tradition is an honorific title, and many high-ranking women were called Nanny in Maroon Town. However, the Maroons are adamant that there was only one Queen Nanny, and according to Maroon oral history, her remains are buried at Bump Grave in Moortown. So the question of her existence can be refuted easily. There was a Nanny who Colonel C.L.G. Harris of Moortown, then a senator in Jamaica's upper house, got behind and became the driving force for her to be recognized as a national heroine. So she did exist, we can agree on that. However, the issues this volume aims to address are more critical with such a title as national heroine bestowed upon her, because in reality, if the Maroons were enlisted/working for the English to recapture runaway slaves from their English captors, the same ones who the Maroons had to fight and run away from to secure their freedom, with Nanny being a part of that group and a leader from all accounts, in reality, what did she actually do for the enslaved Africans or Jamaicans, her own brothers and sisters? Some have however argued that the Maroons were a divided bunch, some focused on self-survival, while others like Nanny were true freedom fighters, neither sympathizing nor compromising with the English, while being proficient at organizing plans to raid plantations and free slaves. According to one account, for over 30 years Nanny was instrumental in the freeing of more than 800 slaves, just over 26 a year or about 2.5 a month for 30 years, which it is said, she helped to resettle in the Maroon community, a somewhat Jamaican version of Harriet Tubman, American abolitionist and social activist. There have even been claims that her freedom-fighting spirit was so great that when Quayo, her assumed brother and one of the leaders of the Windward Maroons who had fought the British colonial forces of Jamaica during the First Maroon War of the 1730s, signed the Second Treaty, it is said that Nanny was furious and was in total disagreement with the principle of peace with the British, which she knew would mean another form of subjugation. Note, the first treaty was signed by Cudjoe, her other assumed brother, who in 1739 reached an agreement with the British that recognized the Leeward Maroons as an independent nation and granted large expanse of land and benefits such as not having to pay any taxes. However, in return for this recognition of autonomy, Cudjoe and his Leeward Maroons were enlisted in the capacity of capturing and returning runaway slaves, for which they were paid a bounty of £2 for each capture, in addition to aiding in the effort of crushing future slave rebellions. Some Maroons of Trelawney Town however felt that they were being mistreated under the terms of Cudjoe's 1739 treaty, which had ended the First Maroon War, and rose up in revolt. Cudjoe, however, with the help of the British, quickly brought his subjects under control with crushing effect, but it was too late, the fire was lit and Windward Maroons had their own issues of being mistreated. Hence the rebellion and resolution that followed with Quayo and the Second Treaty. These claims and arguments however leave room for speculation and dispute when the dates that history has given us are taken into consideration. The first Maroon Treaty was signed by Cudjoe in 1739 and the second by Quayo in 1740, and from many accounts, Nanny died between the year 1733 and the early 1740s, although many Maroons insist that she died in the 1760s. Cudjoe is said to have died somewhere around 1764 and named Akampong his brother, successor, who is said to have lived between the 1720s and the 1770s, while Quayo it is said died in the 1750s. So the dates and incidents surrounding them are questionable at best. According to oral accounts, Quayo is alleged to have shared the leadership of the Windward Maroons with Nanny during the First Maroon War, and under their leadership, the Windward Maroons were said to have carried out the bulk of the fighting against the British colonial authorities during the 1730s, bringing them to their knees. In what can be described as an effort to save his face, it is said that then-Governor Edward Trelawney, 1699 to January 16, 1754, a British colonial administrator and military officer who served as the governor of Jamaica from April 1738 to September 1752, realizing that the British colonial forces would not be able to defeat the Maroons in the First Maroon War, took control of the situation by the pulling of a trump card, which saw him offering a treaty to Cudjoe of the Leeward Maroons in 1739, and with the same results hovering over the Second Uprising, instead of facing the music, surrendering or accepting defeat, he again resorted to his old tricks. In an effort of avoiding an all-out war, Trelawney offered a somewhat similar deal to Quayo in 1740, ending the conflict and immediately enlisting them in the same capacity as their leeward counterparts, commissioning them in the capture and returning of runaway slaves, which reinforced the grip of the slave masters who were having major issues of control around this time. But unlike the Leeward Maroons, the Windward Maroons were also obligated to return all runaways who had joined them in the 3 years prior to Quayo's signing of the treaty in 1740. According to many accounts, it was this decision that severed the relationship between the two Maroon leaders, because after the 1740 treaty, from all accounts, it appears that Quayo and Nanny parted ways. Nanny taking her supporters east to what would later become Moortown on the eastern borders of the Blue Mountains, while Quayo took his people west to central Jamaica, forming a community in a town that later became known as Crawford's Town, on the western edge of the Blue Mountains. So with that said, there can be little dispute regarding Nanny's existence, because from all that has been uncovered, confusion of birth and death dates considered, she did exist. And let's accept that she was a true warrior as the accounts also claim. Even with all that, the questions still remain and should be analyzed for what they were and is, because with Nanny being a contributing factor, at one point or the other, to the enslavement of her own people, who were trying to run away from what she and her compatriots previously ran away from, is she worthy of the title of being a Jamaican national hero, when she assisted in the continuous enslavement of fellow Africans/Jamaicans for however long she did? We know her as Nanny of the Maroons, not Nanny of anything or anywhere else. She was and still is Nanny of the Maroons, a group that were literal bounty hunters for their previous enslavers. She was a part of, and a major figure in an organization that enabled and prolonged the enslavement process. And yes, there are the stories of her helping to free slaves and giving them a safe haven, but if you're playing both sides of the fence, who are you really, and at what age was she doing this, in her twilight years? Note: there is no record, oral or written, of her ever going against her brothers, Cudjoe and Quayo, for the benefit of the enslaved. No, there is none. According to oral history, she did eventually separate herself, but even so, what does that make her, because at the time of her separation, she would have long exited her prime. So is she really a Jamaican national hero, or just a Maroon hero, or a mere self-preservationist who went along with the flow in order to survive, and tried to make amends in her later years? Is that the fact of Nanny, or is she just a traitor to the cause of freedom, who has been shrouded in the sanctification and adoration of oral tradition? These are the questions this volume aims to answer, questions many may even consider audacious, but questions that I believe needs to be asked when the history is placed under the microscope of scrutiny. The main question being, is she, Nanny, really worthy of the title of Jamaican national hero? Let's analyze the facts as we now know them to be.